It's kind of interesting because B.D. Wong's character is completely different in every single one of the movies he appears in. Have you noticed that? It's like he just completely is a different person, like kind of whatever the script needs him to be.
Yes, that's the best thing about B.D. Wong, is he's whatever you need him to be.
In this movie, he was a homeless man.
I liked his depression sweater. I thought that was a cute look.
So we went into this movie knowing that the reviews were absolutely terrible and it was going to be a weird James Bond movie. So we had a lot of spoilers about this movie going in, more so than I usually like to have going into a movie. After Jurassic Park Fallen Kingdom, it really didn't matter to me because that movie's on my top 10 most hated movies of all time list. But we went to see it. I wanted to see it because I do love Sam Neill and I don't get the opportunity to see him very often. And we can go for free because we have the season pass at Alamo Drafthouse, so why not go see it?
My expectations were even lower than yours, I feel like.
Okay.
They were at sub-level 6.
Mine were buried so deep they were underneath dinosaur bones.
Wow. That's very, very low. So, that being said, I enjoyed it more than I expected to.
So, guess what?
What?
This is the best Jurassic World film.
Yes.
This is the best one.
I would agree.
Now, that's not to say that it's not complete dog shit.
Still not excellent
but
filmmaking.
It was actually a pretty good time. And maybe it was because Fallen Kingdom really was just like insulting to watch. I still get enraged thinking about sitting through that movie.
You were mad about it.
And so I was expecting kind of a similar feeling, and because it never came, maybe it's a Stockholm Syndrome kind of situation. But there were some good things in this movie. So they actually did a pretty good job juggling the cast. You have the old cast and the new cast, and immediately you're like, this movie's gonna have too many characters, and surprisingly it doesn't. Actually, like, everyone kind of gets the right amount of screen time. It doesn't feel like we leave anybody in the dust. It doesn't feel like anyone's underserved. And they actually, like, combine them together pretty well when they actually get together about 2/3 of the way through the movie.
Yeah, if they had all been, like, together the whole time, I think it would have been too many characters. But because you could, like, enjoy your nostalgia characters, and then you could get to know these new ones kind of separately, you got to flash back and forth. It was fun.
As much as I enjoyed seeing the legacy characters, and the characters were fun throughout, none of them really did anything that made sense to their character, because even, like, Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler, it's like, now he's a bug specialist, and she's supposed to have been a paleobotanist, but now she's like a geneticist, and it's just it's a mess.
She's a crop specialist. She's now gone from dinosaurs to doing research on food supply and stuff like that.
So she's an ecologist now.
She's an ecologist, just a broad spectrum.
In this movie, if you're a scientist, then you're just the science.
Yeah.
As far as the new cast of characters, which is pretty small in this movie because there are so many legacy characters in it, the main one is that black pilot lady.
Yeah.
She was good.
I really liked her.
I liked her. And, after Fallen Kingdom with the screamy boy who was in this movie briefly, and then that lady who's like a dinosaur dentist or whatever, she has like some really bizarre nonsensical profession. They were just absolutely insufferable, and so this sort of like swashbuckling pilot lady, her character worked.
She was really good. She wasn't like wasted, she
added value to the cast.
Correct. Yeah, she could have easily been like just means of transport.
Yep. Another thing I'll say I liked about this movie, which is part of what makes it better than the first Jurassic World for me, is one of the things that always bugged me about the original Jurassic World was you got, dinosaurs from the original Jurassic Park, and then a bunch of weird hybrid monsters, which is just not Jurassic Park to me. And on top of it, like, part of what made Jurassic Park special was it redefined what people thought of when they imagined dinosaurs, and it brought us up to the present. And so much has happened since Jurassic Park to when Jurassic World came out, and none of that science was represented at all. even like on a very surface level, it just is ignored for the sake of make it like Jurassic Park, which is something that bugged me. Like if you're doing a soft reboot, you could have really updated what these dinosaurs looked like, and they chose not to. In this movie, you get a bunch of dinosaurs we haven't seen on screen before, but are actual dinosaurs. We also get quote-unquote like unaltered dinosaurs, which have feathers and quills and things like that. They certainly didn't spend a ton of time on that, but I did appreciate the effort, especially after the last two being, you know, just velociraptors with lasers on their heads kind of situation, which we have in this too.
Velociraptors with lasers.
But at least I knew that going in, you know. Yeah. It wasn't an unpleasant surprise this time. That's another problem with the first Jurassic World, is it's like you have basically like a pretty sensible Jurassic Park idea. The park is now open, and then they introduce all this like schlock element that clashes with the core concept of the movie. Whereas in this, the whole movie is a schlocky mess, and so those elements actually fit the context of this story a lot better. Eye-rolling, but also, like, makes me laugh.
I feel like it kind of didn't take itself too seriously, which helped.
Yep, that's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah, that really did. There were a few moments where Jeff Goldblum was almost literally winking at the camera. Like,
yeah.
And, you know, because he knows what he is. Laura Dern made some excellent fashion choices throughout, many of which were the same fashion choices she made in 1990.
It's pretty astounding how all of these legacy characters are wearing exactly the same. It's like it's a superhero costume. They're wearing exactly the same. 100%. Even Ian Malcolm, he's like wearing the leather jacket with the black button-down shirt and the black jeans and black boots. Like literally the same
100%
stuff.
Not an accident. That was like so on purpose, and I loved it. Loved it a lot.
Yeah. Obviously, this movie's never gonna beat, you know, the original Jurassic Park. Nothing can, because it's not a movie that's really intended to have sequels, right? Like, you know,
and yet it has
5.
Yeah, I was like,
but you know, it's a premise that works once. It's not intended to work over and over again, despite Universal Studio and Steven Spielberg's best efforts to make it do so.
Best wishes, yeah.
But this was a pretty good attempt because, you know, it's corny and over the top. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and the characters were not grating. And some of the suspense, like thriller action stuff with the dinosaurs was actually pretty exciting. The big thing that this movie's missing is the suspense. You know, the first Jurassic Park, when things go wrong, it's like a pot of boiling water that's like slowly coming up to a boil. And so by the time you get to the end with the raptors in the kitchen, you're on the edge of your seat. In this movie, it's sort of, you know, it's just at 11 pretty much the whole movie.
Yeah, it's a very urgent.
Yeah. There's
a very urgent, I mean, immediately you're dropped into this news story about how bad things are and why we should all be concerned. Mm-hmm. And then you just stay at that level of concern.
We want to get into some of the negatives of the movie, like, so the plot itself is pretty terrible. So the rumors are true. It is about locusts with dinosaur DNA in them, basically bringing about a global catastrophe. It's all very like ripped from the pages of 2007 news headlines, which it was surprisingly outdated. Like, this is a war that's already been fought and lost. Colin Trevorrow apparently read an article about it a couple years ago and like missed the boat. There were a lot of times in this movie where I was like, this is surprisingly out of touch. There's talk at the beginning of the movie of the locusts killing all of our crops, and Ellie Sattler throws out the quote that we're all only 3 meals away from anarchy.
Which is probably a quote from that article that
Trevorrow
read.
Well, it's Lenin's quote.
Oh.
And so, like, what he was talking about is, like, revolution. You know, he's not talking about
literally
an accident, catastrophe, global catastrophe.
I wasn't familiar with that.
And going into this movie when inflation is at its highest in 50 years, And actually more than that, it's kind of funny to hear this movie throwing around, quotes in this like completely nonsensical situation and kind of misinterpreting the quote. That just was a little eye-rolling too at the beginning when they start throwing that around.
Immediately I was like, well, no, I mean, Biosyn created this problem. They're also created the solution to the problem. That's just good business. They just have a corner on the market for world hunger.
I will say I was pleased that, as stupid as the locust plot was, it really is just an excuse to get them to that habitat. And once they're there, it's basically like they're lost on Jurassic Park. Like it turns back into Jurassic Park, and really the locust thing is almost a B story to just kind of get all the characters together and do a bunch of dinosaur stuff. So as stupid as that plot is, it doesn't like derail the movie, which I kind of felt like it was going to, because everyone was talking about James Bond and this movie being a James Bond movie, which it has a lot of weird, like there's a James Bond villain layer in it.
There's a James Bond villain. The woman that I don't know her name. With the
Velociraptor lasers.
The woman from Dollhouse. She was a James Bond villain. She totally was. And then what happened to her? She just
disappeared.
She's gone.
When that plot disappeared.
I for one was happy that part of the movie did happen kind of early. It happened in the first 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I will say that, as dumb as Velociraptor laser stuff is, and I don't like that in these movies particularly, the chase with him driving around on the motorcycle and the Velociraptors chasing after him was a good juxtaposition callback to the first Jurassic World, where he's riding with them, and also was a pretty exciting chase, actually.
It was better than I enjoyed that more than I expected.
Me too. I thought it was going to be just headache-inducing, and none of the action in this movie got to headache-inducing levels.
Yeah.
It gets close because
a little too long, a little bit.
It's too long, and it's like I can talk about how, the action was fairly entertaining. I couldn't name any one of the sequences because there are so many that it all kind of blended together. The other thing is the fact that they brought back Dodson in this, but they recast him with an actor that looks nothing like Dodson, which, I mean, bravo for not putting a pedophile in your movie, I guess, but maybe you just don't put that character in. The guy who's stealing the Barbasol can, in the original Jurassic Park, like, I can't picture him turning into this character where he's like, oh, I'm preserving the dinosaurs the way they actually were, and I have all these lofty humanism goals and this and that, and, just another carbon copy of a pseudo corrupt John Hammond type, when that guy was, it was industrial espionage, like, you know what I mean? Like, he's a sleazeball.
I wasn't sure if we were supposed to think he was Elon Musk, because he had a lot of weird social tips.
Yeah, well, actually, he looks like the guy who runs Apple now.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I was like, either we're
Cook?
trying to be
Something?
Tim Cook, or we're trying to be Elon Musk.
So I just want to close on one thing, which is that the alternate version of this movie in my mind that I think would have been even better, which is that when Ian Malcolm invites them to the James Bond lair to, like, help them steal the information they need to do the thing and set the whole plot in motion, I thought, has Ian Malcolm lost his mind? And is he the villain of this movie?
That would have been a fun twist.
And especially, like, his, like, cynical philosophy, chaos theory, like, he is actually, like, if you think about every Bond villain monologue you've ever heard, they all sound like Ian Malcolm, and it would have been amazing if he was the villain of this movie.
That would have been cool.
I think everyone would have hated it, but I would have loved that. And I was kind of disappointed when he wasn't.
It would have been cool, because especially, it really could have gone that way. He could have set them up to
He could have been like, guys, actually, I was with Dodson the whole time. Don't you guys want to join me in my fucking crazy evil scheme?
Yeah.
So we finished off the last episode of This Week in Movies with a cliffhanger, which was that we were dreading talking about a movie starring Jeff Goldblum, and here we are. Actually had a pretty good time. Did you like this more or less than Doctor Strange?
Oh, more. 100%.
Me too. I had more fun. I think Doctor Strange is probably maybe. I don't even know if it's a better movie. My heart is with Sam Raimi, but I can honestly say sitting down and watching this, I had more fun watching this, and it was a half hour longer than Doctor Strange, and it did not feel longer.
No, it
Like
didn't.
Doctor Strange, we talked about this in that review. I was just waiting for the check to arrive, and I couldn't believe it hadn't come yet.
Yeah.
And in this movie,
The check showed up, and I was
it
like,
kind of
good.
it showed up exactly when I expected it to. So the movie wasn't moving too fast or too slow. It was kind of like
Oh, here we are.
just
Perfect.
exactly long enough that it hadn't worn me out quite yet.
Yeah.